So you think you want a miniature horse? Let's talk about some of the essential things you're going to need to have on hand. Hey miniature horse lovers, it's me Janine over at My Mini Horse Life, and a recent question was posed to one of the horse groups. The question was, what do you need when you're thinking about getting a miniature horse? So I'm going to go over kind of what I feel are the essentials for what you need to have a miniature horse. And then I might do another video on the things that aren't necessarily essential, but they're the things that I really like to have in addition to these things that are essential. So let's start talking. The first thing you're going to need, of course, is a place to keep your miniature horse. Our barn is rather large. Our stalls are approximately 12 by 36 feet. And I like larger stalls simply because there are days that I don't have time to have them have much turnout. So this gives them a lot of room to bounce and play and fight with each other through the bars. So, but you don't need that much space. If you have ample turnout, you can do, I've known people that have successfully had mini horses in large dog kennel size things. Not 5 by 5. I'm talking 12 by 10, 12 by 12. As long as they have enough exercise, they don't need a whole lot of space, but they do need space to exercise, definitely. Ideally, you're going to have your stalls attached to an area that you can turn them out. We have a couple of different pastures out there that I rotate through. I don't like to keep them on pasture 24/7. I do know people that have done that successfully, but my guys don't seem to know how to regulate their food intake, and that can run you into a lot of problems. You're going to need some sort of shelter, but how protected it is going to depend on where you live. If you get lots of snow, lots of rain, lots of inclement weather, you might want to have a little bit more availability for them to get out of the elements if they so choose. A lot of times it'll be pouring down rain and they prefer to stand out in the rain, so I don't question it. They know what they need. Now these panels they're not quite heavy duty enough for big horses or cattle, but they work perfectly for minis, and I can move them around single-handedly and put them together kind of like Lincoln logs. They lock together with these pins. But I've seen people use all kinds of creative materials for their pens. People use pallets, people use just all kinds of things. If you're thinking about doing wood, minis can be little termites, especially if you have to limit feed. They will chew on anything that you put in front of them. I've had termites in the past, and so they might chew on your wood. Whatever you use for materials for your corrals, you want to make sure they can't get stuck in them, that they can't get a foot through them and get caught, they can't get their face caught or anything like that. So that is it as far as shelter goes. I am doing chores while I'm talking to you, so pardon me while I check on the water. So you're gonna need ability to water them and feed them, obviously. You're gonna need feeders. There are a lot of different types of feeders. This is kind of play as you go. You just need something to put feed in. Feed is a whole nother discussion, but if you feed hay nuts are a good choice. People really like the hay pillows or the chicks. Hay nuts, but basically you just need a place to put feed, and then of course you need water. Pretty simple. You also need salt. You can add that to their feed, or you can give them a salt block. Now the salt blocks, they say, are geared towards cattle, and cattle have rougher tongues, so some people will say that the salt blocks do not give them enough ability to pick up salt, so some people will use loose salt. But anyway, you need a source of salt. Next thing you're going to need, you will need a halter. Minis obviously have smaller heads, so you're going to get a mini size halter and a lead rope. Now you don't need to go out and get a horse size lead rope. You could actually use a dog leash as well. Looking at brushes, you're going to need basically just a couple. Minis get very shaggy, so you're going to need some sort of shedding blade for the springtime. This is one of my favorites. I'm going to do a whole video on different shedding things. You're going to need a mane and tail brush. What am I looking for? I have lots of brushes because I have lots of people that come over and brush the minis. So you're going to need a hoof pick. Any little hoof pick will do. And then it's nice to have a curry comb. This is a small size curry comb. It's great for kids. and some sort of soft brush for faces and legs, and a body brush. So that's kind of the basics. There are other things that I'll get into later. Another thing that's good to have is a brush of some type to clean out feeders and waterers. A lot of the grass is pretty tall here. So as much as they would love to be out grazing all day, I can't do that. I could probably get away with it with the yearlings because they're growing, but my old guys, no, I can't. I can't risk their health being out on pasture, but I do allow them plenty of turnout time. One thing that I forgot to mention is that one important thing when you're thinking about having or getting a mini horse is that they are herd animals. And I'm not going to say that you can't keep a miniature horse, a single miniature horse, but they're herd animals and they do best with the companionship of another like-minded critter. Not a goat, not a dog, not a chicken, but another horse. And I'll tell you, having too many horses is so much more fun than just having one. I've had one before and I have 4 now, and they're kind of like potato chips in that once you have one, you're gonna want more. But they do love each other's company and they just seem to thrive better when they have another equine companion. So if you're thinking about getting a miniature horse, please consider getting 2. Another non-negotiable thing is some way to pick up manure. So this is called a fine tines muck rake or fine tines fork. And the spacing of these tines is much narrower than a normal muck rake that you can get at your local farm supply. So the normal size ones are pretty worthless when it comes to miniature horses. Now I've known people who have used dog pooper scoopers or even picked up manure by hand with a glove, but this fork is worth every bit that you pay for it. Optional, but another nice thing is a muck bucket type thing. You can use just a garden bucket. I have this one on wheels because I do have 4 miniature horses and it's a bit of manure to be lugging around, but this is a nice way to accumulate the manure before I spread it in the yard. A couple other non-negotiables are going to be, I always keep a can of wound coat or other wound dressing in my barn just for those occasions when they might injure themselves, minor injury. Same with SWAT. This is actually a fly repellent, keeps flies out of wounds. Then wormer, you don't necessarily need to keep this on hand, but you're going to want to worm your miniature horse when necessary. Now, when I say when necessary, it's recommended that if you have a young horse under the age of 2, that you worm them a couple of times a year with different types of wormer. If your horse is older, you are going to want to send a fecal sample to your vet's office to see if they actually have worms, because you don't necessarily need to worm them unless they have worms. This is my messy veterinary kit. You don't necessarily need to keep all this stuff on hand. It's just stuff that I have accumulated. But I would say non-negotiables are going to be a good digital thermometer and some sort of lubricant to lube that when you need to take temperatures, a stethoscope. Now, if you ever have to call the vet, they're going to want to know a couple of things. They're going to want to know temperature. They're going to want to know your horse's heart rate and probably their respiration rate and something called capillary refill. I'm not going to go into those things right now. I might do another video on vital signs, but you can't do some of those without a stethoscope. So this is really handy to have on hand. With all vet supplies, I can't stress enough that you need to use them under your vet's guidance. Now, I keep Banamine in my kit. Banamine is it's an anti-inflammatory. It also can bring fevers down, but you need to give it according to your vet's guidance. I always keep this in hand in case something happens where there's pain involved, whether it's laminitis or colic or a fever, it's something that is non-negotiable in my barn. Then some antibiotic ointment and some vet wrap. This vet wrap is a little bit bigger than this type that I normally like. I really like the 2-inch vet wrap. And this is just in case your horse has like an injury on their leg. This stuff adheres to itself but won't adhere to the actual hair or skin. So it's really nice. I use this for my dogs. I use it for people. I use it for everything. Some other non-negotiables, some paper towels, alcohol, and I also have some hydrogen peroxide up in the thing that we already looked at. So those, there are more things in here, but those are the non-negotiables for me. Pardon the banging in the background. It is almost feeding time and the horses are anxious to be fed. So those are my non-negotiables as far as keeping a miniature horse. I have lots of things that I have on hand that as you get more versed in having a miniature horse and you start doing more things with them that you might want to have. And I'll do another video on kind of the non-essential but great things to have. Oh, wait, there's one more thing. The last thing I like to keep in my barn is a little chart with the normal vital signs for a miniature horse. And then I like to keep a record of when their last hoof trim is, when their last psyllium treatment was, which is to rid sand out of their system. And I'll get into that in another video. And then their last worming. So I like to keep all this information handy along with your vet's phone number. In case somebody else is watching your horse or sees something that's wrong, it's nice to have your vet's phone number in the barn. Okay, so I keep thinking of more things. If you have your mini horse on pasture and you have thick pastures like we do, it is a really good idea to invest in a grazing muzzle. Not all grazing muzzles are created alike. This one, for instance, has such a big opening in the bottom. It's like not having a grazing muzzle on at all. Here's one that I like a lot. It's got a reinforced large rivet at the bottom and they can't get much out of here. My old guys who are very huge hoovers, the other ones don't work at all, but this one will work fine. If you have a horse that's not really aggressive at grazing, the other ones are just fine. They are made by, I think it's Tough One. And if you find that they're getting too much out of that hole, you can also reinforce the hole, make it smaller with duct tape or something else. But I think that's it now. All right. If you can think of other things that are non-negotiable that you need to have in your barn, please leave a comment in the comments and I will be back here with another video for things that are non-essential but fun to have. Thanks for watching and I hope you're having a great day.